I'm not.
Friends, thank you for being here. We have Robin and Clarence who have been on this journey for goodness. Now it's been a year and a half. No, I think at least we'll go at least on our vision team, and we have come so far, and I'm so grateful to both of you for all that you have done, and especially for being here today. So I'll let you both take it away to guide us through a little bit more detail of what we've been doing.
Okay, great. Thank you, Audrey. So we wanted this day to be very informal, ask lots of questions, feel free to give opinions, it's okay. It doesn't have to be a formal presentation. For those of you who may not know, the Vision Team has been meeting for a really long time, and we struggled for a while because there are big questions in front of us. Sort of what do we want to be, not just by 2033, but beyond, right? What do we want to be when we grow up? Our church is in a very different environment now than we were 10, 20, 30 years ago. Our congregation is in a very different position, plus COVID didn't help, right? So we are a much smaller congregation grappling with these big issues and big issues in society, such as we have a larger staff, we're staffed for growth because there are not as many people available for volunteer women are working, right? So a lot of societal change in the midst of, what do we want to be? How do we want to serve? How do we want to serve others? So the reason why we chose Gensler, I ran the RFP process, and I interviewed both pure church growth companies and architectural companies. And the reason why we chose Gensler is because we knew no matter what, we were going to sort of bump up against the issue of our facilities and our buildings. And what do we do in the future with these two beautiful buildings that need a lot of repairs too. So we felt, why go with a church growth company and then you'd have to go talk to an architect and bring them up to speed. And Gensler has a really strong strategy group. So that's why the people that you've seen here and there, those are those people. So we're still in the midst of work. We're working on a plan moving from this initial input to a strategic plan. Again, to get us to 2033 and beyond. Are there any questions about that so far?
I'd like to just add a little piece to what Robin just shared. As backdrop for some of you, and just revisit for most of you, this is something that I think is fine. Okay. I think it's important to appreciate that, especially for those of you who've been here a long time, far longer than I, that this seems to be something that we take a look at every 5 to 10 years, but definitely every 10 years. So we've been down this road before. I was here when we took a look at the tail shop, and we went through that, and there was an iteration before that. And so as part of that strategic look this time around, we kind of stepped back to say, what have we learned from those other attempts? What was good about those things, and what didn't work? What did we do wrong? Because we're back here again, we just keep coming back. And what we thought and came to the conclusion of was that my grandmother used to say, I'm going to mess this up, but my grandmother used to say, you're getting the cart before the horse. So we were talking about what we wanted to do with facilities for all of the right reasons, but we were not taking a look at where's our church? Where is it now, and where is it going to be? And what part are we going to play in the community? So what we decided to do this time was to start with a strategic look of who we are, just as Robin said. And then as we started to explore that, we came to appreciate that it's very important from a facility standpoint to know who you are, what your vision of the church that you want it to be. So that's going to actually drive and direct some of the decisions you make about your facility. So what's different about this is we wanted to put the horse before the cart this time. Look at it spiritually, look at it from our service and from our mission, and say, this is who we are. Now, how is facilities, how does our facilities and infrastructure help facilitate the church that we want to be? And so that was really important. And so if you only look at consultants that did church growth and vision and mission, but then didn't, now you're going to have to go and speak to and hire a firm, an architectural firm that's going to be able to say, okay, what does this look like? We found Gensler could facilitate both with some support from us, which is why another one of the reasons all of you were involved. So that they could have an appreciation for how that could dovetail into whatever decisions we make going forward. So this was just a first phase. So we didn't have to go out and reintroduce what we had done previously. We had them, they were part of it, and that was a major difference in terms of approach.
And you can imagine there's many groups and many opinions, right? So this first phase was gathering all of that. So we had had a town hall, we had focus groups with different types of folks, other discussions, we had discussions with leadership, current leadership today, the session, etc. So this kind of work that you've seen maybe in the presentation from Gensler is a summary of that. So we knew the things that came out that really struck us are two things. One, we know we want to grow. We want to grow with new members. But we also, there was a lot of discussion about broadening engagement of our current members. That there's, it's that whole 80-20, that 20% of people are doing 80% of the activities. It's that thing where, again, recovering from COVID, what can we do to engage more people? You know, people who may be sitting in the pews and getting a lot out of worship, but what else? You know, how can they be more active in our church family? So that came out in both leadership discussions and also member discussions. So it's a similar theme, again, broadening engagement. So again, how do you do that? You know, it's not one at the expense of the other. So the kinds of strategies and things we're talking about are both. You know, how do you appeal? How do you? And I always keep saying to people, we need to meet people where they are. We need to meet, you know, people who have children of all ages where they are. Understand the kinds of pressures that go on. Sunday morning is no longer sacred, as they say. People, you know, birthday parties, when did that start? You know, birthday parties on Sunday morning because their kids are busy with sports on Saturday. I mean, when did that happen, right? Where is that? So, so for both, and so that's really what's short term and what's long term, and those are the kinds of things that we're talking about. Okay, and it's interesting. You may have seen, you know, Daniel get perplexed because he and Amanda are working so hard to keep us informed in all sorts of ways, online and emails and, you know, paper, you know, mail and announcements from the pulpit and stuff. So they were surprised by this result. Again, I think it's really, you know, all of us at whatever stage we are in our lives are busy trying to absorb all this information. So, and one thing we want to keep track of, no matter what we do, what decisions are made, is that we need to prioritize. The staff and we can't be all things to all people. And that's hard. That's hard to put a stake in the ground and saying a certain program is more important than another program. You know, keeping your eye on growth, keeping your eye on member engagement, etc. So, you know, that's the tough thing. At the same time, you know, again, sort of settling on this question of being good financial stewards of, you know, our buildings and our assets today. I saw that Daniel's email went out about November 2nd. That's part of the stewardship campaign. But the thing that people should really keep in mind is we are very fortunate to have this wonderful endowment. But if we make no changes and continue on the way we are, we will burn through them. And we will be a very different church in 10 or 15 years. And is that what we want to do? And as Clarence said, people have generations have kicked the can down the road ever since we unified in the 40s, I guess officially, right? 1940s. I'm sorry.
1925.
1925 is and then figuring out the buildings, right? And renovating that building, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we've pondered this, right? And we pondered this when the congregation had 1,500 people, and we are not that today. So it's not just about buildings, it's sort of how can we have financial sustainability, but also be a loving church, be the hands and feet of God, right? And do what we want to do for our family, but also for people in the community, in the world.
Yeah, and that piece is important, and in terms of, it's really a match and a balance between prioritizing here, but also having an appreciation for growth out externally. And what I mean by that is having an understanding. We're centrally located in downtown Morristown, and the demographics of Morristown have changed significantly. But the Church of Jesus Christ is called to be the church in every generation. So it behooves us as Matthew 28 to make disciples. And if we're going to make disciples, we have to lead in such a way that draws people in. And so how do we do that? So that becomes a significant part of what kinds of activities are you prioritizing and having that also meet the needs internally, but also are attractive to out there. Because out there is as important, and sometimes I think more important than in here. Because we are the saved sinners. And we're all sinners. But the joy that we have in our salvation is what we want to share. And we have to figure out how to do that in here, and so other people can participate and be part of that joy. As becomes so familiar here, is breathing in God's love and breathing out God's love. And we have to be very strategic and intentional about that, and that drives what kinds of services are we going to have, and what are we going to prioritize, not just for us, but for our community.
So you can see, and you'll see when you see these slides, they're easier to read. There are several themes that floated to the top: worship, fellowship, faith development. These are the things that really were commonalities between all these groups: parents, longtime members, new members, etc. So those are the things we want to keep track of. We want to keep hold of and not let go of those. Those are very important as we grapple with all of this stuff. And I say to Daniel, we have the opportunity, to really make some big decisions for the future and take care of the church for the future. That are more than just, what do we do with that? What do we do with this? And that's what we have to keep in mind as we make all these decisions. Any questions about priorities?
Or comments?
Yeah.
I do know, I think I'm seeing this correctly. It's interesting to me to see that parents' focus group does not have worship up there at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can imagine young parents today it's very different than Elizabeth was 26. It's so different from when she was 16 and when she was 6, right?
Different from when my daughter was 45 years ago.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And what are we doing? We say, and we have such great church family members to help their children. We've heard parents say, we want them to have moral instruction. They would want to give them, and we have all these wonderful adults to expose them to. I mean, I always say the church raised Elizabeth. Elizabeth had many aunts and uncles and grandparents, which was what we needed. And parents out there, they know they need something. This isn't all going too well, sometimes in the school environment. So, but how do we show them and help them really important for all of us. And it's not as simple. We've talked about, contemporary worship, and that's in a later slide. That isn't necessarily a solution. We might think about other forms of worship, etc. And then we all know that youth is a huge issue for us. It's never youth and parents at the expense of our wonderful members who are not 45 or 50 anymore. But we need to sort of be open to what else? What else can we do, again, to meet them where they are? I'm always, whispering in Daniel's ear, like, how about Sunday night? How about Saturday night? Oh my gosh, Saturday night service. But, what can we do to understand today's environment? But again, if we're asking our staff to do different things in worship or program people in our church, then we have to understand that that's being a priority, so then we don't do something else, right? We can't burn our staff out, no matter what, right? And then again, the younger, we all know, it's the younger generations and that will help us. But we also have growth from other folks who are coming in who are looking for a church family. It's not just youth, but really understanding, and it's not just, we've got to get the right staff in place in order to get the youth programs and the youth music programs going again. We talk about, previous times where it was so wonderful and so many kids. I love seeing all the kids in worship. But we're building. We've got to build. This is a big issue that we don't have that.
Carolyn, your point about the worship not being part of the parent group. Of course, you guys know that Brenda and I have children that are young parents.
Yes.
As I thought about that, and Brenda and I talked about it, when we look at these other areas like faith development, fellowship, and outreach, we talk about worship in the traditional sense of worship, but just chatting with our adult children, what they kind of view as worship is that.
Yeah.
And then, as an outgrowth of that, then they start to attend. So it's almost like that's the front end of it, and then they'll worship. They call that worshiping.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
Sure.
it's worship for them.
Because it's still faith related.
It's faith-based,
yes.
and it's worship. And then as they become more part of that community, which is why I think it's important that we continue to do so many of the things that we do actively in this church that include the younger people. As they become more involved in that, then they become more involved in the traditional worship, as we can see by the number of new members, young members that are active and involved and have joined the session and what have you. But I think if we kind of look at it, it's more than just semantics.
Yeah.
They're worshiping.
Yes,
And so.
And I think we all need to understand that.
Right, and then we have to
That it is
figure out a
still-
way to connect those dots, not connect those dots for them, but to provide the dots and a path for them to connect.
And I should say, if you have thoughts later on, you should have asked about this or I should have said something, email me, email the committee, email Daniel. If things pop up, we are totally open to more input. Because obviously this was a subset of people who participated in all of these discussions. Still figuring stuff out, right? And there's also the frustration overlaying all this is we're not doing enough outreach. Every year we do budget, right? And every year we wish we were doing a whole lot more for outreach. And okay, but we have the realities of this and the realities of that. Outreach also is another way to engage other people. And just look at the one day of service that people who participated in that may not have done something before. So it's another way to appeal to people.
I'll have another comment about that, because
Yeah.
I'm going to have to leave in a minute. I've been here 35 years, and for 35 years, almost every time the budget is presented at the annual meeting, everybody's talking about the outreach budget is not a big enough proportion of the overall budget. My point always has been that is the checks, that represents the checks that the outreach committee writes out and sends to very worthwhile organizations. It never shows the work that we do. It never shows the money that we spend going on a mission trip or going down and working at Table of Hope or any of the other community outreach jobs that this church supports. So I think that we all need to realize outreach is more than the dollars that are showing up in the budget.
Yeah.
I know a lot about the outreach budget.
Yes, she does.
If anybody has questions, we're doing our budget now. You know, I know what's in, I know what's out, down to the penny. So. I'll talk your ear off.
And the thing that I think too that's important is what does the community say about your church?
Yeah.
You know, because the community puts labels on organizations, on churches, or whatever. So when they see us at Table of Hope, or they see us, you know, providing services to people who are as fortunate, they talk about that. You know, they compare you to the other churches around in the area. So I agree with what she said. It's more than just the dollars that you spend. People want to see you, they want to get to know you, and slowly they trust you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when they trust you, they come to participate.
And as important as the money is, and it is important.
Absolutely.
The organization is needed, but I'm fortunate enough to, and challenged to serve on one of the boards that allocates funds for all of the service providers in this county. Not all are funded, but every year there are 11 to 14 funded service providers, and that ranges from EDGE, which used to be the LGBTQ. They had to change the name so that it was even more inclusive, and didn't just had to change the name. To Nourish New Jersey, Homeless Solutions. We work with and make decisions about allocating funds beyond what they're already getting to those organizations. We took in this county close to $1 billion, $785 million cut in this county in terms of funding. And we're working through that both at the COC HUD level, but we're working through it at each one of those organizations, having to go and take a look. And one of the things that we are absolutely focused on is picking up that shortfall by reaching out to the community and asking the community beyond just writing checks, but to be able to help us, whether that's making buildings available. I won't get into all of that, but the point of the matter is that there's more, and particularly now going into 2026 as we're finalizing the budget for Morris County, there's far more need than just writing checks, because we probably can't. We can't make up the difference in the money, but we can make up the difference in being actively involved in supporting these organizations. So you're going to see a lot of these funded agencies reaching out to you specifically what you can do to help, because as I'm looking at it there, I'm pushing to say we don't just say we help. Let's be very specific about what we need. So when you do hear from these organizations, they're going to be very, very intentional and specific about the need that they need. So let's keep that in mind.
The clearance brings up a very important thing that we don't want to focus too much on the building. While that's very important, if you look at the critical success factors of why some churches grow, there's two main things. One, which I think we all know, is there a good youth program? If there's a good youth program, then things grow. The other one is how active are the congregants inside their church or outside their church. The more we get engaged, the more you give, the better you feel, and then you grow. And I'd give us only about a letter C on that one. Some people, the same people get involved over and over, and there's other people on the sidelines. If we get them engaged, then you light a fire, you create a culture, and we grow. So for our long-term benefit, building is important, but how do we engage our congregants to get excited about giving? And they feel good, the community feels good, and we as a congregation grow.
Yeah.
I want to just point out something. First of all, this was a wonderful presentation, and it put the materials and the ideas out there in a great way so we can understand. If you go through this, notice nobody's saying you got to solve your building problem. Also, if you step back and you'd say, well, why do we have to solve our building problem? Is it financial? Well, if you solve your building problem, it's not going to solve the church's financial problem. Our money goes to M&A. So I think we really have to step back and look at what they told us to focus on. And in that say, well, where do buildings fit in all this? And not just go back to, oh, let's focus on the buildings again. We did a capital campaign 10 years ago. That was going to reinvigorate the congregation. It didn't. We have wonderful, more beautiful buildings, but you know, it's easy for us to fall back into that and not focus on the priorities of what Gensler is telling us we said and the community needs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I have something I think is really relevant to all this and ties it together. I've only been here not even 2 years. I go on the monthly hike, the second Saturday of the month, right? And there's normally been 7 to 8 people from the church. It's been really pleasant, kind of intimate. You get to know someone new. Yesterday, I went on the hike. I drive up, and there's no exaggeration, like 35 people. And I'm like, am I in the right place? Anyway, the point is, apparently, Amanda told us, and I've missed the past 3 hikes because my wife passed away, so I haven't been able to go. Anyway, the point is, meetup, I don't know what meetup is. I'm not a technology person. Apparently, they put the hike on meetup.
Yes, and then we're getting a lot of people.
There were people of all ages, all churched people, non-churched people, Jewish people, a mom with her son. It was incredible, all because, my point is, all because of meetup. Again, I don't know what meetup is. But it opened up the whole group. Now, frankly, part of me rejoiced and I said, this is amazing. And I met someone, she was Jewish, and she said to me, you know what, I'm not the least bit interested in coming to your church. I'm not interested in the religious part of it. But I love hiking. I love photography. And you know what else I learned? There are so many lonely people, including me, okay? And you need social interaction. Not hovering over your phone is not gonna meet that need if you're lonely. You need social interaction. Anyway, I'm still blown away. As I was driving away, I'm like, how did we go from 7 people or 8 people to, no kidding, probably 35. And again, it's not about just about the numbers. It's it would never have occurred to me because I don't know what meetup is.
Well, now you should learn because that's exactly what it's for. Was to meet up with people with common interest.
So there you go. So what do you want to call that? Do you want to call that church growth? I don't know. What do you want to call that? Isn't that what we want to do?
Community engagement.
Community engagement.
And let's be clear, there are some people who might say, well, wait a minute, that hike is for us, that's not for other people, right? So we have to understand that that's a wonderful thing that might make you a little uncomfortable sometimes, but that's exactly what.
Part of it, frankly, was a little overwhelming because I thought, who should I talk to people I know from Presbyterian Church in Morristown, or should I talk to someone I've never met before? And a part of me was a little overwhelmed, like this is too big. I liked it better when it was more intimate. I liked it better when there were 6 people. But then I thought, well, what's the aim here?
Mhm.
And-
But-
Good points.
But I think that by doing we're making the connection, whether that person chooses to be part of the church or whatever. They may not wanna be the formal part of the church,
Exactly.
but we do other things that they might be willing to come to because there's no commitment.
Right.
And I think that's the thing that
Exactly.
for the younger generation, the thing that makes it a struggle is they wanna participate, but they don't wanna commit.
Exactly.
They'll help you do a task, but they won't do anything that you say that I have to come to this meeting every month or they don't want that. But if you say, let's do this and let's do this project, would you be willing to help? Commitment of 1 or 2, meetings or whatever, they'll help you with that.
Yeah.
But for the long haul, they're not.
And Brenda, that also goes a little bit to what you said earlier, I think, is that is also building knowledge in other people of our church, where if they don't ever come, somebody will say, well, I love to hike. Oh, well, this church in Morristown does a meetup hike every second Saturday of the month. Or this church in Morristown is doing this project at Table of Hope. Or this church in Morristown, so again, we don't necessarily reach out to people, the young folks, I understand, I don't know where God told me this, are really interested in outreach programs, in doing something with their hands to help an organization in Morristown. And so they might be ones that would come and help on a specific task. May wind up coming, may not, but again, you're increasing our impression in the community. So, yeah.
I went to a program some years ago that was sponsored by PCUSA, and the man said the most important thing is getting people through your doors, finding things that will attract outsiders. And I was working at the festival on the green and trying to get families to come to our booth. I said, oh, we've got candy and this, and then I said, and we're going to be having an outdoor Halloween movie, and suddenly the
Yeah.
were asking, exactly when and where and so forth. So I think if we can find more things like that will attract outsiders, like the hike, it's really crucial.
Just bouncing off what Brian and Brenda were saying, I think the beauty of these outreach programs and things like the hike, where people just hear about the activity, they may not be ready to join a church. So many people are completely unaffiliated with religion today. And the seed falls on the ground and it hasn't been watered yet, but maybe over time, that little seed that you drop on that hike and you plant it in their hearts, those people 6 months later may say, gee, this seems like nice people. Because one of the things I always say to Patty about, one of the striking things, particularly about this church, is the quality of the people you meet. People that are active in a church, they just tend to be really good people. and it's not easy to meet really good people, especially in this day and age. So I think that's the idea, is to plant the seed and then you don't know what's going to sprout from there.
Yeah, I had a thought about what Brenda just commented on regarding the younger generation not wanting to commit, and I think that's okay. I think that if they just want to help with one Saturday, 3 hours, that's all they can do right now. And I think we should welcome that rather than saying, oh, you can't be on the committee every, twice a month. Oh, okay. So I think we should start to encourage more of that. And I know that's not our ultimate goal, but I think once their lives become less busy, and I think that's the impediment right now, is that they think and they don't really have a lot of time if they have young children.
Yeah.
But I think it's okay to say, all right, if you can give an hour, that's great.
Yeah. And we've done a lot of reading, great article, a Notre Dame alum, great article on religion today. And there's so many people who feel that they're spiritual, but that whatever variety of religions they've been exposed to are not what they want, are not meeting their needs today. But they do feel, it's not that they're atheists or agnostics, but, you know, understanding that and understanding how do we tell them what it's like to be a Christian, what it's like to be part of our church family. So, and the epidemic of loneliness, very real, very real.
I spent most of my working life in consulting, but in intellectual property consulting. So where the key is value proposition. You know, if you're trying to sell a chair or a book, you know, it's tangible and I gotta beat you on price and those kinds of things. But value proposition, and that's very, and so in many ways, the Church of Jesus Christ we're consultants. And what we are presenting is a value proposition. And our value proposition, and you'll see this in one of the slides that's coming up, is connection, it's compassion, it's humility, it's inclusivity, it's service, it's those things that uniquely make us different from, and I don't mean this in the sense of it's going to sound like a business term, but competitors.
Right.
It's like and our competitors is the world.
Yes.
Our competitor is the sinful world.
Yeah.
And so what differentiates you? What's your value proposition? And that's what this is about. And so what this, some may look and say, why do we do this and spend the time getting all this information? It's to help us have a greater appreciation for our value proposition. And then go out and live that value proposition where folks say, that's what makes them different. Now I understand. Because I get involved with you and I get a chance to both see you living the value proposition and then joining you over time, little by little, and becoming part of that community. And that's how you sell consulting services.
Now, you wanted a specific slide from us?
Oh,
Or
no,
this one or different?
This one.
Okay.
Go.
No.
Well, I was just kind of leading into it because what we were able to identify were, because of your help, it is what are our attributes, our strengths, and our weaknesses. And I won't go through those, but what we, but a couple of points that really jump out at us. And this just keeps coming up in our sessions, and it's really not just refreshing. Sometimes it's just, we're sitting in meetings and we're talking about these things, and all of a sudden you just almost feel like you're in a worship service there, because one of the words that continuously comes up is love. And so one of our attributes that they found was that love and acceptance of all. This is what you say and we say that we are. And you can't go wrong with that. Along with love is selflessness and Christ-centered. So what we got from the congregation, against the congregation, is these as major strengths. So whatever we find as weaknesses later, and that we were able to identify, if you have those attributes, and the value system that I talked about, you will overcome weaknesses. It's more than just the glass is half full. The glass has the opportunity to just spill over because you have those attributes. And then that combines with the strengths of community and family. And so that's another word that just keeps coming back. Love and community. Love, community. And the weaknesses that are challenges for age-old diversity in terms of ethnic diversity, generational diversity, declining youth engagement. So, but again, I would implore you to appreciate that one of the things that you do is, as opposed to, now we do need programs that are gonna address those kinds of things. But again, I go back always to key foundations. If I am nurturing and loving and being in community, then the programs are built around those. So the strategy, the foundation of the strategy is there because we've already said it. So now it's a matter of living that out and then developing strategic programs and plans that dovetail into the critical foundation. So the weaknesses are not as glaring as they appear if you kind of step back and look at it from a foundational standpoint and what comes first, the strategy or the foundation. The foundation comes first, and we're doing that. So, and then I already talked about the balance in the next.
Just one comment. Notice there's nothing in weaknesses about buildings. It's not something that's top of mind for people.
It's sort of, that's a sort of overarching thing, and I think.
I don't
for
agree.
us-
I just don't agree. I think it's driven by finances. Nobody's telling us that in order to grow the church, we need to fix the split facility situation. It doesn't come out in those slides. You might say it's connected to financials, but I'd start with looking at the financials rather than jumping into buildings, because buildings are inward. And everything's telling us go outward, do outreach, do hikes. That's all the messages coming in. It's not go look at your buildings again.
And you're right, absolutely. What the thought is that sort of like buildings follow, what is our vision for the future that drives how we are the hands and feet of God, and that drives prioritization, right? So prioritization, thus far, prioritization has been staff. Staff is the biggest because we are staff for growth. That's the way we are today. And that, is that where we're going? Yes, we want to grow, right? The second thing is buildings. It's not just the buildings, it's not split facilities. Years ago, the last split facilities discussion was, oh, parents don't want to leave their child down there and come here. We are way past that. We are at the financial sustainability question.
So I would say start with financial stability. No, don't start by assuming we got to start focusing on buildings again. Look at what they told us the priorities are. And if buildings come out, that's fine. I don't see buildings anywhere in here. And I don't think there's a solution to the buildings problem. We've tried over and over again, and we have historic preservation grants that, limit what we can do. So, I just feel like kind of we started saying, oh, we got to solve our building problem. And some of us have been on, previous iterations of trying to solve the building problems to come to the conclusion that there is no solution. What I would like to see us do is focus on the messages here, the priorities that Gensler told us. And I think the thing that leads you to buildings would be financial stability. But look at that before you jump back into buildings.
Yeah, and that's
And is buildings the focus of it?
Yeah, it's the financial stability, it's the financial sustainability. That is the
Correct,
issue.
but I don't think when you get into that, you solve the building problem, you're gonna solve that. You need more pledges, you've gotta get, people, the endowment is, how important is the endowment? You grow people, you grow pledges, you're gonna solve your financial problem. And do you wanna go look at the upside of getting more revenue, or do you wanna start focusing in on cost control with the buildings? And I just think if you start with the finances and don't assume it's the buildings, that's my plea.
Yeah, and in previous generations, like the tailor shop was the tail wagging the dog. It was, oh no, we could buy the tailor shop. Oh, what do we do with it? We don't know. And that's one of the reasons why the session decided not to move forward with it. They were, so we're trying to do it the other way around. Where do we want to go? Therefore, you know, how are the buildings serving us, and the
Right.
realities of financial.
And parking and space here, you know, it all leads you back to saying, I don't think there's a solution.
Robin, that's a great segue to something that the committee's been talking about, and you've been very adamant about is, and appropriately so, the misconception, if you will, of the size of the church. And so I'm gonna, because you do it so eloquently.
Okay. Well, even though we may think we are bigger, really the active pledging community is quite small for the size of our plant, right? We're talking, I don't know, 300 around. That's and the same 300 people doing all the stuff.
And for the size of our staff.
Serving all the people plus our staff, and that's one of the reasons why we also are staffing for growth. That's our goal, right? But that's something that we're committed to. It's a reality we really have to look at, and we no longer have, to put it bluntly, these super wealthy, amazing families who would step into the gap and help us. And so it's not a terrible thing. As Daniel said in his email, we're not in terrible shape. It's we need to decide now before we have a fire sale in 15 years. Just, okay, so get over it. It's going to be different. Then what do we need to do? And that's what I'm always like, you know.
And that drives finances as well, because if
Right.
if you think that you are a 750, 800
Right.
member church, your vision of, you know, the finances and the planning that you do around that is built on supporting, with having that level of support. But realistically, when it's half that, but you're still making the same decisions, then therein lies the question of sustainability. You just can't do it. You just can't.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So is Gensler done? That's the first question.
No, they're not.
Okay. And has Gensler, who's an architectural consultant, I love all of this stuff, but have we taken it to the next step in terms of our financial sustainability, or in terms of our buildings, because that's their expertise? Have they given us an opinion, an outside objective opinion of this makes sense or this doesn't make sense? There's a dichotomy here, there's an antithesis, or take the walls down. You know, that's my favorite phrase, but the hikes are taking the walls down. That's a euphemism for me. Take the walls down, but that means many things to me.
Yeah.
But have they given us, from their expertise and their knowledge and their work, an objective point of view of where we're at?
Not yet, and it wasn't in the scope. The scope was to, but they sit right over there on the top floor, and they see our building, right? And they know, we've talked about it a lot. So we would expect to move into another phase with them, because obviously they lowballed us like crazy on this strategic phase because they're interested in the work. You know, anybody who's been a consultant knows that. We would have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for this work. So yes, that you're right. That's where we need to get to.
And they'd be good at doing a financial analysis. That's not that
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah, I mean, they looked.
And they'd give
looked
us
at
an
our
outside
buildings,
view.
They looked at the usage per square foot, for example. This
I'm not
building
talking
is used
usage per
Sunday.
square foot, I'm talking church financials
Right.
as a whole.
Right.
Look at the revenue, look at the endowment fund, how much can we spend, you know, what do we need to do to survive? And I'd say start with finances, not related to anything with buildings. They may come back and say, yeah, you got $100,000 you could save by, you know, consolidating your buildings if you could do it. They also may come back and say, hey, you gotta get more pledges, you've gotta, you know, you grow by having more members come in, you grow by growing your endowment fund. They can give us, you know, and they'll tell us you're spending too much probably. But they can do that as a financial study.
So those are your 4 minutes.
Yeah, we have 4 minutes. Some of them here, raise your hand. No? Okay. So 4 minutes. This is as we shared, and we'll keep sharing you all, love first. That's who we are, right? And we never want to let go of that. That the whole spiritual reason we're all together, right? And then our purpose to create opportunities for people to experience Christ's love. Our outreach, our programs, our tearing the walls down, our all of that, right? And also prioritization. Outreach right now gives teeny bits to many groups. Is that what we want to do? Is that our focus? It was okay 20 or 30 years ago when there was a lot more to spread around, right? And then our vision that all may be one with God and one another. In the end, that all may be one, like the stained glass window, right? It's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. So this is where we are. Ponder this, email us, talk to us. But all the things you're talking about are really, really important. Yeah.
And the intent is that this is not a tagline. We all, again, I've been here over 20 years now, time flies, and we've had really wonderful taglines. I mean, we've had them carried around in our pocket, we wear them. The intent of this is to take each one of them in terms of our purpose, and then look at those, and then build around those. So actually have tangible things that say love is first. And so what are we going to do actively that defines us in terms of love is first, and through all three of those. So that's what's different. This is not a tagline. This is who we are, who we're going to present ourselves as, and how we plan to live as a church community.
It's a guiding principle for each one of us inside of us as we live out here.
As a faith community.
That's our North Star. That's our North Star. It's love. Anything else? Again, things that may occur to you, my emails, and please do it. Send me whatever you want to send me.
Thanks for doing that.
Can we give Thank you both, not only for this presentation, but all the hours and hours and weeks and months and a year and a half of work. It's a lot, and you've done so much, and we still have so much more to do, and so it's up to us to contribute to that work as well. So thank you all for being here. Let me close this in prayer before we head on over to worship. So let's pray, friends. Gracious God, we're so grateful that you guide our steps, that as we lead into our mission, our purpose, and our vision, that we may be your disciples, that we may glean what it is that you want us to do, and that your Spirit may be with us as we put love first in everything that we do here and outside of these walls. Be the hope and the love between us until we meet again. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.